Hello to all of you from around the world. I want to thank you for joining us for this edition of Soulivity Today. We're broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Westley Johnson, and whether you're at home, driving, or at work, we're always glad you're here with us. We have another amazing show for you today, as well as a special guest that I will introduce to you in just a moment. You know, there's a lot to talk about today, so let's start here. You know, right into the new year, iHeartRadio posted on its boards that they were introducing the inaugural episode of the Native Land Pod, co-hosted by people like Angela Rye, Andrew Gillum, and Tiffany Cross. It went on to say that these three old friends are pleased to be teaming up to bring their decades of political experience and knowledge to bear and have a little fun while they're at it. And as with all new prominent content, backed by large entities like iHeartRadio, there is always a broad and wide media blitz, which markets and promotes any new show as well as its host. Now, Native Land Pod was everywhere, with hosts being interviewed, many different internet, television, and radio shows in an effort to, bring awareness about this new production. Now, that leads us to a specific interview on the MSNBC show, The Readout, hosted by Joy Reid, noted national correspondent, political commentator, and author. You know, someone who I have watched for a long time. Now, this interview included Angela Rye, host and executive producer of Native Land Pod, but also Leonard McKelvey, also known as Charlemagne the God, a moniker brought about by the widely known podcast, The Breakfast Club. Let's watch some highlights from this interview.
Charlemagne the God is the host of the popular morning show, The Breakfast Club. His popularity with the youngins has put him in a unique position to impact the world of politics. I began by asking Charlemagne why the mainstream media, and particularly Fox, seems to be so obsessed with him these days.
I know what they're doing. They're using me and the things that I say about President Biden administration to say, see, look, black people are totally, fed up with Biden and his administration. I don't speak for all black people. Black people are not monolithic. My name is Leonard McKelvey. They call me Charlemagne the God from Mount Corner, South Carolina. I speak for me and my perspective.
So when people are calling you, and specifically black people, what are they saying they feel they have not gotten out of having voted consistently for Democrats and for Joe Biden?
Upward mobility. Simple as that. Like, people want security, and a lot of that security is financial. Like, it's simple and plain. And it's been, whether it was President Obama, whether it was, all the way back to Clinton to now Joe Biden, they feel like the Democratic Party has never promised that. And it's like right now the problem I'm having with my listeners, what am I supposed to tell them? Like, what am I supposed to tell them other than, look, man, Donald Trump is a fascist. You may think things can't get worse, but they absolutely positively can. But if they feel like, I've already lived through a Trump presidency. I lived through Reagan. How much worse can that get? Like, it's like, what do I tell them? They're not afraid of just telling them to go out and vote because of fear anymore.
Well, the response to this interview set Black Twitter ablaze. There was a loud and definite reaction to it, mainly because of the inclusion of Charlemagne the God and what people were calling his inclusion into this interview problematic at best. Popular satirist Kenneth Walden, also known as Too Raw, Too Real on Twitter X, gave a long commentary about his feelings. Here's some of the highlights from that video.
Yeah, I'm calling you in because I'm a friend, and you know what? You're going to be offended by what I got to say, but as far as this Native Land podcast goes, I won't be watching it, won't be streaming it, won't be supporting it, won't be promoting it, because Charlemagne's name is on it. We already know Charlemagne is problematic as It's interesting enough that this man will literally use his platform to misinform, and the fact that this man has still gotten away with the fact that he has been accused of sexual assault, and he even went on a live recording, which we have the audio for, saying he had sex with a woman who was incoherent, and by definition, that is rape or sexual assault. That's not me. That's what the law says. And for the fact that I have to go here and listen to Angela Rye as she talked about her own personal experience dealing with sexual harassment, with Chris Cuomo calling her tinsel crotch and her being actually groped by TSA, And being the fact that she continues to support a man who was accused of SA kind of makes me question her morals. But the reason why I want you to give pause to Charlemagne when he spread all that misinformation and lied, and this is where the straw broke the camel's back, when his lied on Stacey Abrams back in 2022, saying she had nothing for the black community when he helped her host a forum with 21 Savage in September, about what she wanted to do for the black community, how she was going to reinvest in the black community, give black business owners contract work from the government, how she was going to expand Medicaid that was given to her from the federal level, from the Biden-Harris administration, while Brian Kemp closed trauma centers in black communities. It pisses me off. Y'all talk about upward mobility. There's no upward mobility. I'm gonna shake my head with Kundamane. There's no upward mobility. I guess record low black unemployment is no upward mobility. Black businesses booming under Biden is no upward mobility. $7 billion in HBCUs is no upward mobility. Y'all saying a lot of damn shit, but it ain't matching figures in these damn numbers. Y'all can be mad if you want to. I'm calling you in. I'm not calling you out. I want y'all to do well, but I won't be supporting it because of Charlemagne.
Well, all of this leads us to our guest for today. You know, I was on Twitter right around when all of this was happening, reading through many different commentaries on this interview, as well as others done by other networks. And I found one that was really encapsulating my feelings at the moment. It was detailed, it was fact-driven, and most of all, it was clearly honest. The author of that commentary was Ernest Owens, an award-winning journalist, CEO of ERNEST Media Empire, LLC. He has a long list of journalistic associations, including being the editor of Eater Philly, a political writer at large for Philadelphia Magazine, as well as serving as president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists and the regional vice president of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, the Mid-Atlantic chapter. He is also the executive producer of the hit podcast, Earnestly Speaking, the host of the Philadelphia City Council live on WURD Radio, as well as the author of the book, The Case for the Cancer Culture, How This Democratic Tool Works to Liberate Us All. Ernest, I have been looking forward to this for days now. I mean, we talked via email shortly after you had published your Twitter commentary. I will never call it X, by the way. It's still Twitter to me.
Right, me too.
And I was so impressed because it was thorough, it was thoughtful. You weren't trying to go after anybody, and specifically, you were just expressing your emotions based upon your in-depth knowledge of the media space.
Correct.
Right? So my first question to you is, you mentioned on Twitter that your commentary isn't coming from a place of just disgust, but from legitimate concern. What concerns did you have at that moment as you were watching this whole thing unfold?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm super honored to be on here and to be able to talk about, my work and everything that has come since that viral Twitter moment, or X moment, but Twitter moment. But no, I was concerned about this year. This is election year, as we know. It's a serious election. I feel like every 4 years since Trump, that is a theme, right? That every this is the election of a lifetime, and it do feel like that. I'm 32 years old. I'm a millennial, and I feel like every election I voted in has been consequential. 2012 was the first time I was able to vote, and it was for the second term of our first ever Black president, Barack Obama. After that, I voted for Hillary, but Trump won. And then after that, we was able to reset the table with Biden, and now here we are again, 2024, hoping that we can save this country. So it's every election I've ever been able to vote in has been consequential in its own right. And what has really driven some of the misinformation has been the proliferation of people in our community that are not as political aware, savvy, or intellectual, but they're being platformed to be chaos agents. And it's great for ratings. It might be great to be provocative, to have a, contrarian for pay, but at a time where people are, having a dearth of Black credible representation in media that's being promoted. They exist. Let me be clear. There are many Black men in media, such as yourself, such as myself, and others that are out there doing the work. We know who they are. They're in various newsrooms on the local and national level. There has been an increase of representation for Black women, of course, as it should be. But for some reason, they are putting buffoons alongside a lot of these intelligent Black women, and there has been that common thread where we're seeing, washed up rappers and athletes dominate and over index the representation of Black men in conversations about news and politics on various media platforms. And Charlemagne the God, I believe, embodies that. And that is his own personal history on the airwaves is problematic, long-standing problematic. And then his placement right now in the political media space. Joy Reid's Twitter account, the Readout, that is for her show's Twitter account, called him a political maverick.
Yeah.
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 That wasn't,
and there's been other people. Again, I highly recommend people go check out Kenneth Walden's commentary. There's some language there and that kind of thing, but he also brings receipts around things that have been said specifically on the Breakfast Club to Charlemagne, where within a few, not even an hour, sometimes even real time, he will contradict himself.
Oh, 100%. I mean, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, I think his whole persona is like, I'm gonna have these firebrand. See, the problem is that when you start your career being a contrarian, he reminds me of some men at the barbershop, not all, because I go to the barbershop, but there's always a couple of brothers at the barbershop that will just, they're between common sense that is like, okay, I can rock with that. And then there's this tinge of conspiracy and what is going on right now, rhetoric. And he dances on that line all the time. And then sometimes he goes completely overboard. There's a level of immaturity that is there. There's a level of course, misogynoir, homophobia. It's all of that packaged in what is supposed to feel real. That he's saying it like it is, that he's speaking, but it's interesting because who are you speaking real for and about? Who is that audience that your type of messages resonate with? And do those people really represent the Black community for you to go on a show like Joy Reid's or Abby Phillip on CNN and be able to espouse these very misguided, tired and old tropes? It's the same redundant thing we see in political commentary every 4 years. This question of, the Black community might, convert to Trump. They might, or they might go, they're going conservative. The data does not show that. Yes, there's always a small few that do, but is any party worthy of 100%? No, because Black people do carry various nuances, but holistically, we've always been the larger population that have voted Democrat across the board.
Absolutely. When we come back, I want to take a quick break because I want to make sure that people really feeling, because we're going to have a really in-depth conversation today, as much as we can given our time. But when we come back, I want to make sure that people really understand what we're talking about here, because with all of these shows, they spend millions of dollars for them. So they absolutely, positively understand who they're trying to market to. And so are these shows really trying to market to the Black community? As well as, you know, why should Charlemagne the God be considered a Black political commentator, and should he be platformed? I'm going to have Ernest answer that question when we come back right in about 2 minutes. Hi there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoyed the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life. Hey, we're back with more here on Soulivity today. We are talking with my very special guest, award-winning author and political commentator, Ernest Owens. So glad to have you here, brother. We're talking about the current state of Black media, especially after this latest blow-up that happened after Charlemagne the God appeared on the MSNBC show, The Readout with Joy Reid. I'm going to use a question that you rhetorically asked yourself on Twitter to start this next discussion. And you said, in a world where any of these women would rightfully criticize a conservative for doing such problematic things. I mean, you kind of mentioned some of those things before. I mean, there's things that he is on tape saying that he's committed sexual assault, what we would consider rape, right, by legal standards, and other things. How is it okay for Charlemagne the God to have a platform alongside them to talk about politics? And your answer?
I mean, it's a double standard. I mean, I think for starters, Trump said, grab her by the, and this man is talking about Spanish fly. I will always say that misogynoir and sexism and rape culture is it crosses racial lines, gender lines, and various other socioeconomic lines. It's something that every community has problems with it, right? It's not a Black problem, it's not a white problem, it's a people problem. And a lot of the individuals that I spoke about, they've spoken out against it. I mean, someone mentioned about how Angela Rye, called out Chris Cuomo for his disgusting remark about her, which was wrong. And I don't think anyone on this show would disagree with that. What Chris Cuomo is accused of saying and doing is unacceptable. That being said, if there is a serious, criticism about that type of behavior when you have someone like Charlemagne the God who has himself admitted to doing something even more offensive, an assault. I mean, inappropriate language is not okay, but in this case, this man isn't just saying inappropriate language, he admitted to assault, right? And he's had numerous allegations as well of actually doing this type of behavior. So it's just baffling that has not been addressed. There were articles that I found from various Black women. I think there was a Black writer named Blue Tsaluma who wrote about how Angela Rye had previously defended Charlamagne the God for those accusations, and I didn't even realize that that this something she's already done. She has in many ways have backpedaled and played both sides when it's come to him on this particular topic. And this was
Okay.
years ago, but it
Okay.
resurfaced in my thread, last week. So it's a double standard, and
Okay.
it's not okay. And let's be clear, money is a part of that double standard, right?
Oh yeah.
They have a podcast. They're collaborating with a podcast company, Reason Media or something of that nature. And this show, Native Land, is a part of that. It's connected to iHeart. iHeart also has the Breakfast Club. There's a lot of moving parts in this connection for this. They're business partners in addition to being friends. So
Right.
it's a lot of when you look around, you wonder there's something in the mix there. It's not all clean in the milk.
I'm glad you said that because I want to make sure that we give people some facts, some receipts, some information so that they can make up in their own mind. I mean, you and I are already we have it. And so we're like, okay, so money's here. There's a money thing happening here. You got iHeartRadio that is basically being a distribution point for Reasoned Media, I think, a company, which is co-founded by both Angela Rye, there's another person, and also Charlemagne the God, right? They co-founded this thing, right? And that Native Land Pod is the flagship content for that Reason Media, right? And so there's all these connections here. And so you have two Black women that are on a show that's being produced by someone who's, we're going to say, allegations of sexual assault and all these kind of things. I agree with you. There's a double standard here, right? Because again, if I can't help but think that if this was a company that was run by, let's say it's a white conservative male, would they have done this deal?
Oh, absolutely not. And they shouldn't, right? But to be clear,
exactly.
Native Land Pod is the flagship show for iHeart Media's new political podcast network, which is called Reason Choice Media. And the founders is, Angela Rye, Charlamagne the God, and Chris Morrow, who is the CEO of Loudspeakers Podcast. So I just wanted that was in my notes. But that there is that connection. And of course, Charlamagne the God has his own podcast and work separately that is also through iHeartMedia. And then the Breakfast Club is in that mix. So there's a lot of ancestral dealings. I'm talking business ancestralness where it all crosses and interlopes and intersects. And his appearances with her is a part of expanding that brand. Because I do think that Charlamagne the God wants to rebrand himself. I think that he is really trying to make himself this. I mean, we see it with conservative media where there's always that, unhinged, raw, opinionated conservative voice that isn't really intellectual, but they're just like the man of the people, the voice of the people kind of attitude. And he's trying to be that in the liberal spaces. Like he acts like he's telling us something that we don't already know, that he's being frank and 100. But in reality, he's just basically entertaining these very bad faith arguments
Right.
to appear to be a provocateur. Most
Right.
Black voters understand the stakes. They do have their nuanced thoughts about the Biden administration, rightfully so. I do. But at the same time, let's keep it 100. None of these opinions are driving us to vote for Trump. Not
Okay.
in mass. The data does not show that just because we're not all the way pleased with the Biden administration, which to be honest, none of us have ever been 100% pleased with any administration. And if you are a Black American, until there's reparations, until there are other more equitable means in our society, we're never going to be 100% there. I mean, you got people like Mark Lamont Hill who who did not vote for Obama during the second term. He voted Green Party. And so it's always going to be outliers, but at the same time, that those outliers, those individuals who are outside of the majority do not represent us. They represent a perspective, but we shouldn't over-index that perspective as if that's the norm. And that is the problem I think we're seeing in Black media, is that we really amplify extremes. There are stereotypes about Black men on podcasts, and it's often we got to take the mic from Black men on podcasts because the narrative is we're all hoteps and we're all this, we're all that. But it's like, what are the I would get annoyed because there are several incredible Black podcasts that are hosted by
Right.
Black men that are really
Right.
great, and I listen to them, and my friends do. But they're not being. But there's a part of me where I'm upset about the stereotype. But then I'm like, well, if you look at what's being promoted in our pop culture, what's getting spotlighted, what's being talked about the most, what's getting virality, it is washed up rappers and former athletes that are doing hot takes, pushing products that can be, probably connected to fraud, some of them, right? We've seen it, right? Breakfast Club is
Right.
caught up in this drama
Absolutely.
right now, right? We're
Absolutely.
seeing ideas like tired tropes about LGBTQI people, women, fake gender role war conversations that are dated, conversations about who pays the bill, the man or the woman. It's just like we've done this before, right?
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
basically the barbershop talk getting a larger platform. And what was said
Absolutely.
in the barbershop was supposed to stay in the barbershop. But for these people to try to capitalize off of the conversation and take
Right.
it into a podcast where they're really ill-informed, they're not reading the books, they're not doing the work, but they want an opinion so bad. And
Right.
we're
Right.
seeing that thirst. And it's money, is right. The virality of it drives the sales. Like there are people who are on Twitter, for example, that now that Twitter has created a monetization of posting, there are people that purposely put out misinformation and toxic information and content to get engagement. And that engagement
You-
is making money. And we see it all the
Yeah.
time.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit because, I'm going to skip break right now because I think we're on to something that I think needs to have a little bit more wider lens because
Right.
there's reasoning to all of this, right? There is things that are behind the scenes. Sometimes it's right in front of your face, and that's kind of like, you hide it in plain sight, right? And I want you to talk a little bit about why is this so problematic? And what's the concern? I mean, like, what things that are happening that you want people to know that are keeping you up at night when you're seeing this kind of content being pushed out? I mean, again, we know it's all about money. It's all about engagement. It's about the likes, about the commentary. It's all about getting people worked up, right? So that they do this, right? But what's keeping you up at night when you see this kind of content?
The fact that there's being harm committed. When you think about Megan Thee Stallion trial, right? Not even her trial, it was Tory Lanez trial, but but she was in many ways put on trial by the hip hop blogosphere, right? Which is the problem, right? The Breakfast Club model, when it came into real prominence, I personally think it's past its prime. But when it came into prominence, you know, I want to say about 10 years ago, when I feel like it was at its height about 10 years ago, and ever since then it's fallen off. And when it was at its height, it felt like, you know, an anomaly in the media space, because you had, you know, this interesting duo. You had a guy who thought he knew more than what he really knew, which was Charlemagne, an enabler, DJ Envy, and a woman who knew better but needed to be somewhat of the voice of reason, which was Angela Yee. So they all three had this role. And if you watch any of the shows, which unfortunately I had to watch a few to really observe and study it. At one point, I was Donkey of the Day, um, which is hilarious. But one of the things that they do is they play off of that persona. And
Right.
there was a dynamic there that resonated with people for a while. They really had some big names. You know, this is when they was having Jay-Z and Kanye, and you know, when Kanye wasn't Kanye today, they were having bigger names. Now they have regurgitated certain types of personalities. They try to even it out now, but it's just not hitting the same in the same way in the cultural conversation. But that
Right.
being said, that model was a problem, because what it did was it facilitated and entertained very bad faith conversations on politics, sexuality, and gender. You know, I think
Mm.
about the Little Duval remarks about killing Black trans women and how they mocked and
Yeah.
made those references. But then they had Janet Mock, you know, right before that show, who is a trans activist, writer extraordinaire. Like, the fact that they had this dichotomy, they would have queer characters or individuals on shows. You know, Justice Smollett, before his controversy, was on there. They would ask these really basic surface level questions that they just would never, that just shouldn't have been on a show, right? But they were
Right.
just
Right.
so regressive, and yet they were viral, they were popping, they were hot. And so what that did was that legitimized that type of form of media. And then ever since then, you've seen people create their own versions. We have
Yes.
seen so
Yes.
many half-baked breakfast clubs that now it's become its own genre of
Right.
media, of Black
Right.
media. And
Right.
everyone's trying to duplicate that model, because it doesn't require much. It doesn't require you to read. It just
Nope.
requires you to have a hot take and be willing to defend it at all costs, even when you're wrong, in the wrong. Or you can contradict yourself while you're debating, right? Which is
Right.
what
Right.
Charlemagne has often done. So that
Right.
model has been resonated. But the weird part, and this is the part that people have that are starting to catch on, is that now we have seen white people create hip hop blogs and media sites
Yes.
to
Yes.
capitalize off of this division and bigotry. Like, I
Right.
think about Vlad TV, which has been around for a minute, but Vlad TV has only increased because of the type of guests that were on the Breakfast Club. Vlad TV has taken those people and they've given them more time to espouse lies, bigotry, and hate on a larger platform. And then you have the Shade Room, which is Black owned, but they're only interested in the sensationalism of it all. So they
Right.
are amplifying it. Like, why are people like Boosie, you know, there's this, you know, washed up rapper who had a couple of great hits that were like, what, 15 years ago?
Years
Why
ago.
is this
Yeah.
man always given a platform? Like, why should we care what he thinks about queer people? Why should we care what he thinks about anything? Like, it's like force feeding people on us. Like, we're being force fed people like him. And we know what he's going to say. We know the harm. And so what keeps me up is just knowing that people that we know are problematic in our community's media ecosystem are getting amplified on the daily. And so
Right.
it's ridiculous. Like, I know there's critiques about Lil Nas X, but it's just, the sad part is that it's become predictable. Like, we know anytime a certain Black LGBTQ, you know, artist or person, you know, goes up and goes viral, there is going to be a automatic counterpoint that's going to be
Right.
given legitimacy at that time.
Right.
Boosie's relevance comes at attacking LGBTQ people. Every time there is like, even The Color Purple comes out, right? Which has been out for nearly 40 years. We know there's a queer, you know, character story arc in it. But yet they wanted to make it a point that his stupid video about it, they were like, oh, we got to amplify what he thinks about this movie. Why? Why?
Right.
Why can't we
Why?
have good news judgment and say, who cares? Move on. What's new with him? He's
Y-
been saying this. Why do we need to give him more platform and space to hurt people in our community. It's anti-Black.
You know, I'm so glad you're bringing all this up, because I look at it like this. I mean, if we move the lens back a little bit, right? This is not hurting anybody else except communities of color, right? In all of its shades and all of its hues and all of its dynamic, right? Where we're talking about in your Twitter commentary, you talked about the fact that this is happening during an election year where people are talking about and reiterating bad polling numbers about the Black community, right? Where you know the whole thing around that Black people aren't going to come out to vote for Joe Biden, and this whole kind of like Trump and ecosystem kind of blew up around, oh, well, the Black community is not going to come out and vote for the Democratic president. Everyone knows who's ever done any kind of research around polling for a presidential election that is 12 to 16 months out means zip. It means nothing. It is not accurate. It is not consistent. And as you've seen, as it's getting closer,
they know that, you know, and you know, cable news have just gotten worse by the year, because they you know, I just remember like before the caucuses, the primaries for the GOP primaries, they were really acting like, oh, it was going to be a race. This is a blowout.
Right.
Like Trump is pretty much this is Trump and Biden. Like, stop it. But like they really were acting like, oh, you know, Nikki Haley's coming up. And it was like, where is this analysis coming from? Like, what are you talking about? Like it's Iowa people. Like, are we surprised? Like, there's all of these, but it's like soap opera. It's like a storyline. It's like, are you bored? Are you lazy? I'm just getting lazy. I'm getting lazy. Like, no one wants to go out and do the work. Like, rather than entertain what Charlemagne the God is saying about some random straw poll of some audience that he claims represents the ideas and voices of Black people, you could actually just go out into communities more. You have these big, massive budgets. These are billion-dollar companies, right? Multi-million-dollar productions. You could actually just go out and talk to different civil rights leaders. You could talk to the ACLU. You could actually talk to state ACIU people to ask about voter suppression. You could talk about what is the current landscape. You could talk to city commissioners. You know, I'm in Philadelphia. We have a Black city commissioner. You could interview him and ask him what it's looking like. There are 1,000 ways to do that work, because I've done the work. There's other people in local politics doing that work in media. We exist. And so it's just so irresponsible. It's so reckless to give this man the platform in this way and to give him legitimacy that he really hasn't earned. What is political or maverick about Charlemagne the God? How is he a political maverick? How is he an expert in this? He's an expert, you know, chaos agent. He's an expert in debauchery on you know, I'll give him that. But political maverick is just too much. And I think that that's what we're seeing, is that the legitimizing of buffoons in our community is a commercial thing. It's a form of capitalism. Like, there's an investment in that because it's not fun. They think it's boring, right? Like Native Land Pod is sad because I'm not listening to it. I listened to the first episode, you know, but I can't support something that is being produced by somebody who wants to see people like me suffer.
Well, you know, on that note, we're going to take a quick pause, because at the end of the day, when it comes to this, these people are making money. I mean, Charlemagne the God, if you didn't know, everybody, Charlemagne the God, I think the latest number was $3 million a year that he's making off of this particular, off of the Breakfast Club specifically, and broader his contacts. But when we come back, I'm going to ask Ernest, what's the bottom line here, right? I'm going to give him some time and just kind of like let him speak from his heart when it comes to this, and give us what he believes should be our next step And so we're going to take this quick break, and we'll be right back with more of Soulivity Today in just a minute. You can find all of the Satana products at our Go shop at go.soulivity.com. Hey, we're back with more here on Soulivity TV. We are talking with Ernest Owens, an award-winning author, political commentator. He's also the president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. We are talking about the state of Black media, having an honest discussion about it. Ernest, I'm just going to open up the floor for a couple of minutes. And from your perspective as a scholar, I mean, listen, you're a scholar that's done work at both Annenberg schools at University of Pennsylvania and at the University of Southern California. Yes, I've done my homework.
I got my bachelor's from Penn's Annenberg School and my master's in communication management from USC Annenberg. And yeah, both. One is one is communications management. Yeah.
But you've done the work. You've done this research. This is your bailiwick.
Yeah, I'm a journalist, by profession, but communications, that's my field of study. That, from my bachelor's degree at Penn to my master's at USC, political, strategic, crisis communication, like all of that. And it's been great to be able to be a journalist because I consider these things in my own work. It's what's also inspired my book, my debut book, The Case for Cancel Culture, is like talking about these how do people get canceled? All of those different things. It comes from that study, from that basis of knowledge. But I've made it more contemporary about, high profile examples in history. But to that point, it's what I'm learning, what I want people to understand is that none of this stuff is random. None of this stuff is a coincidence. This is by design. There are strategic plans, there are marketing plans, there are all types of things happening behind the scenes to shape it. And as someone who is aware of that, because I have done consulting, I have done these things, I know the kind of conversations that are happening behind the scenes. What I am doing as an advocate is letting people know when it's being done in what I believe to be a bad way. I'm going to speak on it, right? Because I can see it. We see it with Jonathan Majors. Like, our community at large may not know that there is a whole strategy behind it, right? Some people call it PR strategy. It is, right? But we're starting to see a trend, and people are starting to wake up and say, And Cat Williams, for all of the debauchery and mayhem that was stirred from his visit on Club Shay Shay, right? Cat was, there was certain things he was saying that I was like, okay, that you're recognizing there's a wider thing here with some of this,
right?
Especially with public figures. And for me, what I have been able to see is that when I see problematic people that are utilizing or exploiting resources or people to try to assuage themselves from accountability, I think that's what Charlemagne the God did. I was very disappointed with Tiffany Cross, Abby Phillip, who I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, me too.
Rye and Joy Reid. And let me be clear that there was a lot of lies being said. Angela Rye, in her thread when she responded to me, which she didn't even address anything I said about Charlemagne the God. And after reading, previous, articles written about how she's defending him in the past on this topic, I was kind of like, okay, that makes sense now. But one of the things that she tried to imply was that I was a sexist, which is a lazy trope because I'm Black, I'm gay, so I can't be racist.
Right.
You can't
Right.
call me homophobic. So because
Right.
I'm a man, only thing you try to imply is sexism. But I'm like, you're applying all of this pressure on me, but you have none of this smoke for Charlemagne the God.
Right.
Like,
Right. 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 I
it's like
understand that.
the
Yeah.
smoke is being applied to everyone else but the person in question. Because
Right.
this thread was about the concerns I had around this man's image repair. And I feel as though, in my opinion, that he is using his proximity to these Black women to basically use them as a shield from the accountability. Like every time he wants to pivot to another move, he has gotten smarter in this regard of aligning himself with credible people to legitimize his ignorance.
Mhm.
And I feel
Mhm.
like they're falling for it. And I was trying to figure out what was happening. I was like, why is Charlemagne the God in this conversation? Like, why is he here?
Yeah,
Because
that's a good question.
he's investing in projects and collaborations with smart people to align himself there. So if you're around enough intelligent Black women, people will think, oh, he must be worthy because Black women's influence is that infectious and that powerful. We
Right.
know
Right.
that. It meant something when Oprah endorsed, Obama, when she did. It meant something to see Black women encouraging people to go to the polls or get vaccinations. And so
Right.
when you have that kind of influence and power politically, socially in the community, why waste those resources on someone like him?
Mhm.
Because that's
Mm.
the root of the problem is that we're seeing intelligent Black women waste their resources on men who have spent over a decade of their career degrading and demeaning them. Like Charlamagne the God's entire rise to fame was built off of homophobia and misogyny. And that was before the Breakfast Club. Like this man,
Right.
his entire shtick, if he was less sexist, less homophobic, right? Less transphobic, we wouldn't be talking about him.
Right. Right.
We would not be talking about him.
Right.
Like his whole
Exactly.
rise to fame, and there's no real accountability there. Like, okay, you feel bad about what you did. Well, go to time out. Sit this one out.
Right.
Know your lane. Why are people not staying in their lane? I
Right.
think that's my issue. My issue is there are lanes for everybody. I know my lane. My lane is I am a media professional. I am a journalist. Like that's my lane. You're going to hear about social injustice and issues around media through me. I know my lane
Right.
and I'm sticking with it. But in this entertainment industry, they have become money and power makes people think they can be and do any and everything. And when you inflate an ego like that, look at Trump. Someone should have told Trump, you are an unsuccessful businessman. You're privileged. You're an
Mhm.
entertainer at best. But because of his money, his power, and his influence, he was able to say, well, I want to be president. And that happened. And I feel like ever since that has happened, we have seen, it's always been there, but we have seen a rise in entertainers across the board aspiring for politics, and some of them are smart enough to do it. I think Hill Harper, this man went to Harvard. This man has always been civic minded.
Right.
It's believable for him to run for office. But then
Yeah.
you got people like
Yeah.
Jason Lee who wants to run for office. Now, Jason Lee this man who's also built a career off of degrading Black women, peddling horrible tropes about folks and being just the town gossip, right? This guy now
Yeah.
wants to run for office.
Ernest, you're bringing up another thread that I think we need to pull, but I want you to
Yeah,
come back. Would you come back and talk to us about this part of it? Because
100%.
it's money, power, influence, and media, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
this thread that's there that I think people really aren't aware of. They think they might know it anecdotally, but they really don't know the in-depth corruption and other and insidious kind of things that are happening, like what we're talking about today, right? Where money
Absolutely.
can just change the whole equation. Listen, we're running up the time. I want to make sure that people know about you and where they can find you. You got there it is. There's the book. The book is the case for culture.
A lot of this stuff, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is literally in this book.
Gotcha.
It came out last February, so it's about to turn, 1 year old. It's my baby. But I have audiobook too. I'm actually the one reading my audiobook, St. Martin's Press. But this book is like, I wrote the book on this. There is something to say about accountability, like the research, the interviews I've done with so many great people. I interviewed so many folks. One of them is one of the co-founders of Mute R. Kelly. These are individuals who spoke out against the media, who challenged authority. They were able to get Tom Joyner to take, R. Kelly's music off of the airwaves. But that took, organizing and roots. There are still good people out there, is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Preston Mitchell, who's a civil rights attorney, doing great work. And there are people out there that deserve to be platformed. So
absolutely, including yourself. And so I'm on platform some more about you, where people can go out and check out your Earnestly Speaking with Ernest Owens. You can go to either on Twitter with his link tree there, or you can go to earnestlyspeaking.buzzsprout.com for more information and to listen to the latest one. Or earnestowens.com. Absolutely. So man, thank you for being here. This has been something, again, that has been on my heart for a minute since all of this came out. And again, as I read your Twitter commentary and you were bringing home the facts, bringing home the receipts, I said, I got to have you on here. So thank you. We're going to continue this conversation, brother. We're going to continue this conversation.
I agree. Like with this election coming up, there's so much that the community needs to know about media literacy. And especially
absolutely.
Recognizing the bad fake actors, so for sure.
Absolutely. Listen, we got to get out of here, but I want to thank everybody out there for joining us for another Soulivity today. This is how we do it, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern, for all of our live broadcasts on Soulivity TV, and at 8 a.m. Pacific time on 1490 AM radio. That's KMET AM FM out in Southern California. Until next time, keep on pursuing your passion with purpose, and so you can create your best life today. We'll see you next time. This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.